Warning, today's video might get a bit heavy. In today's video I'd like to show you an extremely powerful and quite easy rhythmic twist that you can add to your riffs. This one immediately gives you that super heavy bounce that a lot of modern metal bands are using for their riffs, and once you fully understand that rhythmic concept you will be able to add it to all of your own riffs as well. So let the riffing and heaviness begin right away. You guys and girls voted for the topic of rhythm guitar exercises on the lesson wishlist on Patreon for this month. So I think this is the perfect topic to take your rhythm guitar skills to the next level while also keeping things musical and practical. And we're gonna need the help of this little guy for today's lesson. That doesn't look too special yet, but when you add this dot to your quarter notes, for example, the results will be quite explosive. So a dotted note is a note with a small dot written after it, simple enough. And right away, here's the important theory information and your biggest takeaway for today's lesson that I want you to memorize. This dot increases the duration of this basic note by half of its original value. In other words, this means that a dotted note is equivalent to writing the basic note tied to a note of half the value. So that means you can think of the dotted quarter notes we are working with today as a quarter note tied to an eighth note. And when we choose to work with this system for our riffs, the heavy accents don't land exactly on the beat anymore, where we're kind of used to hearing them, and you get that really cool heavy, floating and kind of bouncing sound like that, for example. And in case that's not heavy enough for you, I recorded another take with my 7-string guitar tuned to A standard. As always, you can download the tabs, guitar profiles and really helpful video play-alongs for all of those exercises I will show you in today's video on patreon.com/Bernd. So I think this concept sounds really cool and maybe a bit progressive even with the way that the heavy accents are falling on the offbeats. And it's actually much easier to do and less complex than it might sound to your ears right now if you're not used to this approach. So before we dive in and really dissect the use of dotted notes some more, I'd like to show you a small comparison. I recorded another example riff with my 7-string guitar, and that one is a lot more basic. And while that's not essentially bad or forbidden, I think you will get a better understanding of how cool those dotted notes work with those accents when we compare this more basic example to the practical example I recorded for this lesson. So I think the second riff sounded much cooler and more lively, and it had that kind of bounce we're going for today. And the first one kind of sounded a bit too basic and boring, at least for my personal taste and ears. So the biggest challenge with playing, composing and really nailing riffs like that is obviously the timing. And that becomes evident when we listen to this riff just performed to a metronome. So that might sound a bit confusing at first, but as always there's a method to the madness. Most guitar players that I worked with so far really rely on the playback or on the drummer to nail those important accents, and they really focus on the backing track or on the drummer to kind of mimic that on the guitar. And once you take that foundation away from them and they have to perform those kind of rhythmic patterns just to a click, things tend to get a bit complicated. So to help you out today, I'd like to share a super important and helpful trick that will make it much easier for you to perform these tricky riffs based on those dotted notes. So based on the theory information in the beginning, we can think of dotted quarter notes as a quarter note tied to an eighth note, but of course we can also think of it as an equivalent of 3 eighth notes. So the really important trick and most important takeaway when it comes to your playing is actively thinking in the subdivision of eighth notes when you're playing those dotted quarter notes. That way you don't just randomly play those accents whenever you hear them in the song that you're playing to or with the drum backing track you're playing to. You really have that grid of eighth notes in your mind, but you don't don't play every single eighth note. Of course, you only play on those accents, and the dotted quarter note takes up 3 eighth notes in your eighth note grid that you have in your mind. Let's check out another example riff right now, and a great way to start practicing this. With this one, the rhythm and the accents stay exactly the same, like in the first practical example that I played for you today. But instead of letting those dotted quarter notes just ring out, I'm playing a group of 3 eighth notes for every single dotted quarter note. The first one is an open accent that shows you where you would actually play the dotted quarter note, and the 2 following eighth notes are dead notes. So let's check out this really helpful rhythm exercise real quick. So this is how I actually recommend starting out learning and playing rhythms that require dotted quarter notes. Most of you guys and girls will be familiar with playing regular eighth notes, and the only difference right here is that we are grouping them in groups of 3. And here comes the final really cool rhythmic twist when it comes to this exercise. This is the next level. After practicing those groups of 3, you can just delete the dead notes and only play the accents. So we're essentially not changing anything about the exercise rhythmically, we're just not playing whenever we would play the dead notes. We are only playing the accents, the first note of each group of 3. Here's how that sounds like. Once again, here's a comparison between those 2 exercises and how I count them in my head.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then the final level would be just letting those accents ring out, but still thinking in this grid of eighth notes in your mind.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And by following this approach, you move from simple eighth notes to groups of 3, to just playing the accents, and then to playing dotted quarter notes. And by following this principle, you will always think in that grid of eighth notes in your mind, and your riffing will be extremely tight. So I really hope you will use this awesome system for your riffs and for your music from now on to make it more interesting and more heavy. Don't forget to download your tabs, guitar profiles, and really helpful video play alongs for this lesson on patreon.com/Bernd. As soon as you join us in the shred guitar community over there, you will have immediate access to an archive of over 100 technique and theory lessons. And as a VIP club member, you can also get some personal feedback, coaching, and input from me in case you need some personal assistance with certain topics. And also don't forget to subscribe today to become a real part of this guitar community right now. I will hopefully see you again in the next video lesson. All the best and have a lot of fun working on this until then.